Hello, welcome back everybody. Today we have here Chris Brown.
Hi.
Chris Brown actually is leads in ecstatic dance. What would you say? He puts on an ecstatic dance, which is a form of dance. Well, it involves being in your body and really experiencing being fully in your body, as we always talk about on the show. But before we get into that, let's talk about Chris Brown as personal history, because Chris Brown,
The man behind the music.
the man behind the music, has experienced some things relevant to what we like to talk about here on One Flashlight. He's been, as he would say, worked over quite extensively with traumatic brain injury. Well, concussions. I'll let him tell you about how traumatic it actually was. But Chris, take it away, man. You say you've had numerous. I don't know where you want to start. If you want to talk about all of them, it's fine.
Yeah. I mean, I could start with my birth really fast. I had a very traumatic birth. When I was born, I was 3 weeks late. The umbilical cords were wrapped around my neck 3 times, so I was starving. My kidneys weren't working, so when I was born, I was under 4 pounds, kidneys not working. They put me in an incubator, gave me an injection to jumpstart my kidneys. I still don't know how that works. I still have the scar on my ankle from when they gave me an injection the day I was born.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a rough start. And they thought I wouldn't make it. The doctors actually didn't let my parents hold me, because I think their reasoning was I wasn't going to survive.
So they don't want to get attached.
Yep, why let them get attached? And again, it was like we were saying, it's like that medieval awareness. It's like, if you think about it, if a baby needs to be held by its parents, that gives it a fighting chance.
Mm-hmm.
But to eliminate that kind of nurturing. So, and I feel like that still affects me on some level. I mean, that's maybe not necessarily what we're talking about, but that was probably my very first experience of a traumatic incident. It was the day I was born.
Sure.
So.
Because you were, from the beginning, you were dealing with that sort of separation. Almost.
Exactly.
So for how long were you?
I think I was in an incubator for at least 4 weeks or so. Yeah, so it was a lot of time to not really be. I mean, I think nurses held me, but it was like when they were on shift or whatever. So
yeah.
I think it was after a couple of weeks my parents were able to hold me. But yeah, so like the first 2 weeks or so, my parents didn't even touch me. So.
Wow.
And that also, of course, instilled my view of doctors and hospitals and the AMA. I think that was where all that started.
Yeah, you were, the illusions were cast aside very early for you.
Yeah.
And just reality of what you're dealing with.
Yeah, the world I come in.
The real world, yeah, wow.
Which if you read into that, maybe that's why as a baby I purposely got all wound up in the court, because I was like, I don't want to show up here. These people are crazy.
Yeah, I mean, maybe your spirit had something to do with you just saying, well, I don't want to have any part of this.
Yeah.
But then,
yeah.
Okay. So that was the beginning.
That was the beginning.
Wow.
I actually cannot remember how many concussions I had. I've had so many.
Mm-hmm.
I've had at least 5 concussions. I remember one in the days before remote controls with the garage door. Me and my mom were taking a little road trip, and I closed the door from inside the garage, and I would run out of the garage as the door was closing, and at one point I didn't duck far enough, and it just laid me out. And I remember we still went on our road trip, and my mom kept poking me, because she was, that whole thing, you're not supposed to, if you fall asleep after a concussion, maybe you go into a coma. Mm-hmm. So she'd poke me every few minutes to keep me awake. And the worst one, I was in college, and this was like 92 or so, 91, and I ran with some buddies. We were jumping on an icy sidewalk and taking a little ride, and I remember running and jumping, and the next thing I knew I was on the ground, and 10 people or so, and it's a very disorienting experience when you come to after being knocked out. So I didn't know where I was or what had happened, but everyone was looking down at me on the ground like I was dead, and they were all looking at me, all freaked out. Mm-hmm. And it freaked me out. I didn't want to be there, stared at like that, so I tried to get up and started convulsing. My body wasn't working, and it was like all my circuits were we were short circuiting, and I couldn't actually get off the ground, which aggravated and freaked me out even more. And then everyone was insisting you need to go to the hospital. I didn't want to go to the hospital for reasons I mentioned, as well as others that I'll just mention later briefly. But anyway, my friends talked me into going to the hospital. All they did was they took an x-ray of my head and they left me in the room, and I was just laying in this room for I don't know how long, just like, hello, hello. Finally I go out and there's like some person at the desk, and I'm just like, are we done? What happened? Can I go? And they were like, oh, we looked at the x-ray, you're fine, yeah, you can go. It's like, thanks for telling me.
Yeah.
At least the one thing though, I turned to walk out, and I turned around and I was like, wait a second, can I see the x-ray at least of my skull? And they were like, yeah. So they put it up on the board, so I saw the x-ray of my skull. So I was like, all right, well that's cool.
How did it look? I mean, could you even tell that anything?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, because we're all doctors here, right?
Yeah, yeah. Hey, it was like no one was even there to say like,
Yeah.
maybe this would be like what you look for. It was like there was no one even there to tell me anything. It was just like, all right, thanks for all your support.
How much of that whole experience do you remember? Was there a time when you were knocked out that you were like, amnesia, where you're just like, that you have no recall of? And
well, with that specific thing, I think what I remember from that particular one was I was definitely irritable for a while after that trauma, and I definitely had like short-term memory stuff.
Yeah.
I've definitely noticed in my life having short-term memory. I've also been knocked out unconscious from 2 separate car accidents that were really bad. The last one was in 2004. That's the last real serious trauma I got.
Each of those experiences, do you like wake up in hospital or wake up?
The last one, the accident in 2004, a truck ran a red light and I didn't see him until I entered the intersection where the intersection was. And I hit him going about 45 miles an hour, and the airbag went off and knocked me out, and my car was completely totaled, the engine was sheared. And when I came to, again, it was that totally disorienting experience of coming to, but basically there was like sunlight coming in through the cracked windshield, and all the talcum powder or whatever is in the airbags filled the car. So it was like, basically I didn't know if I was alive or dead, because it seemed like an image of heaven. It was like sunlight coming in through cracked glass, through white powdered smoke. That's what I came to.
Wow.
And so, for the first few seconds I was like, am I dead? Like, what happened? And then it was like, reality just came back, and I remember what just happened, and it was like, okay. And
not only are you not dead, but you're alive, and you're in a car that has just been totaled.
Yeah. And the guy who was in the truck didn't even come over to like check on me or anything. He was just sitting in his car, and all he said to me was, "You ran the light." That's all he said to me.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks
and so then I was like, did I run the light? I don't know. And then, but another couple came over in their car and they said, we saw, here's our info, we'll be your witnesses, he ran the light. And I was just like, thank you.
Right.
So
it turned out okay as far as that?
It turned out okay, but it was, that was awful.
Yeah.
And I loved my car, and it was destroyed. I mean, literally, like, the engine was literally destroyed, and it was such an intense impact, because he was in this big moving truck. So, yeah, I mean, I definitely noticed things with that. I think my sleep was really off. I was moody. I've definitely, over the years, had distinct memory problems.
Have you had fatigue problems?
I have. Yeah.
That was very common with me recovering, was that I needed a lot of sleep. I don't know if that was something.
Yeah. I think, I remember there were days where it would be like, come like 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, was usually, and I would just be like, dragging so hard.
I was saying, it's interesting that they say that, once you have a concussion or a brain trauma, I guess once you get your bell rung the first time, I guess statistically they say it tends to happen again and again and again. It's I haven't researched that fact myself. I've just heard this repeated over and over. So you sound like maybe an example of that. Like it's found you on more than one occasion, this head trauma.
Well, yeah, and it's interesting. I mean, I've led a pretty active lifestyle, And it seems like that's the injury that repeats. Like that's my thematic injury of
Mhm.
my life is head trauma. It's
Mhm.
like, except for like maybe a hairline fracture in my big toe, I've never broken a bone.
Mhm.
I haven't really, but the head just seems to have
Hmm.
taken the brunt of most of my really bad injuries. I also noticed, I can be like in school, I had a hard time, like ADD symptoms or whatever, just hard time concentrating. And I think I still have that sometimes. I'm ultra sensitive. I'm ultra sensitive to lights, like
Mhm.
fluorescent lights. I can't
Yeah.
focus. Chemical, smell. I think I've heard something with that with head trauma. Like you're really sensitive to chemicals.
Well, I'm sensitive to everything like you. I mean, for me before, I wasn't really sensitive to anything at all. It's kind of numb, but after, like, I feel like I have no filter on a lot of things, and I'm just like,
Exactly.
whoa. you know?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's very, very interesting that
Like-
you've had that experience.
Yeah. Like if I walk into a mall past like, the nail salon or whatever, I have to hold my breath
Yeah,
for like as long as I possibly can.
yeah.
I can't handle that smell.
Yeah,
It's
I've
like-
got a lot of similar experience. I can't. For me, a department store, the lighting in there, that
Yeah.
electric sort of zzz, and
Yeah.
I'll hear that buzz.
Exactly.
It's like, I feel like I'm getting my brain fried or something.
Totally.
Yeah.
Exact same. Yeah.
I think that's certainly, I think a consequence of brain trauma for sure.
So yeah,
going
like this intensified sensitivity
Yeah.
to things like that, to things that are unnatural,
Right.
chemicals and fluorescent lights,
Or just
bad metal.
traffic,
Yeah.
the highway.
And
a lot
I
of
think
stuff.
the irritable thing too. Like with traffic, I can get really irritable. I can kind of have a short fuse sometimes,
Mhm.
and I want to blame it on the head trauma. I want to think it's not just me because I know it can be kind of
Mhm.
intense sometimes, and I've come a long way with working with that, with learning to breathe when I feel.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's like someone cuts me off in traffic, and my fire is like instantaneous,
Yeah.
and
So that's your way of maybe dealing with it is just maybe getting angry and
yeah, maybe like the lack of a barrier with my sensitivity, and so that the fire or the anger comes as like this protection,
Mhm.
kind of a compensation
Right.
kind of thing. Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's it's it may be in some ways be positive because
Sorry.
no worries, that goes on the blooper reel. No, I was gonna say in some ways it may not be a bad thing because at least you're not sort of repressing that anger and you're letting it out,
Yeah.
expressing yourself. I mean that's one way to deal with it. And I think like a lot of people we say, I think they say something like 10% of the population has had head trauma. So I think it's very natural to assume that a lot of people may have similar sensitivities, and we're all sort of freaking each other out a little bit. I know for me, I have kind of a short fuse too, and yeah, I try to lay low as much as I can, just because I don't, sometimes I worry about like how I'm gonna act in certain situations. It's like it doesn't feel like me. It's just this this reaction coming through me.
Yeah.
And then I look back and I'm like, oh man, that's not who I am.
Yeah. Wow,
So-
I can totally relate to that.
Yeah.
I mean, there's times I get really anxious about social situations. I mean,
Mhm.
I can go to a party where it's like people I love, and I'll get so anxious,
Right.
and just it's like the energy. I feel like there's like no barrier, so I'm just immediately feel energy, and so it takes me time to merge.
Yeah.
It's like this merging period.
Uh-huh.
And so maybe when I show up at the party, I'm kind of aloof and standoffish, and then people
Mhm.
are like, "Whoa, what the hell is wrong with him?"
Mhm.
And I'm like, I'm just trying to like rest down to like be with
Yeah.
you all.
Right.
And I've had that so many times. Like
Yeah.
so like concerts, like going to concerts, like less and less I go to concerts because it's like so anxiety ridden for me.
Right.
Like going to this big crowd of people.
Yes, and that's such a great segue in what we're talking about next, because I experience the same thing at parties where my thing is I get overwhelmed. There's too many people talking, too many conversations, and I can't track
Exactly.
it. And with the music, with the concerts, the only way that I can go to a concert and not and stay in my body and not completely lose my shit is to actually to dance.
Yes.
And that leads us into
Boom.
I know that you said that creating in leading this dance that you do, ecstatic dance, wasn't necessarily a direct correlation to, the head traumas necessarily, but it seems like a natural progression almost, because I found for me, dance is so important in, expressing myself and just being in my body and not, just being out to lunch or, being depressed. I mean, it plays such a crucial role in recovery from my perspective. So anyway, take it away. Is there anything that you'd like to share about your dance? And I know it's ecstatic dance. It's a loose version of the 5 rhythms as you explained. But tell some people who may be wanting to get out and experience dancing and maybe a little bit different kind of dancing what they're used to, and just talk about maybe the environment that they'd be stepping into with your dance.
Okay. Dance is just profoundly liberating for me. Just a chance to have this authentic expression of just being in my body and just what's really going on, what's just really dropping into myself and having the space held to do that. And I first discovered that at like Grateful Dead shows, maybe when I first was like, that's where I first danced, where I let myself dance in this freeing way, where it was like I wasn't worried about how I looked. And it was like, whoa, this is incredible. And then I moved to Portland 13 years ago and started going to soul motion classes. And that was the first time I went to a place where an ecstatic dance, where the space was held, alcohol, smoke-free, where they just played music and you could just be, and that you weren't like contending with drunk people, being territorial over space. You could just be in your own. And I just remember thinking the first time I walked into that, I was like, oh my God, this is home. Like, I feel at home here. This is amazing. And soon after that, I connected with a group of people that were renting a ballroom, and they invited anyone who wanted a DJ to DJ. And so I started dancing or DJing back in 2004, just putting music sets together, and I've been doing it ever since for 11 years now. And now I DJ with 2 other people, dance called Mindful Meltdown. We're now at the Red Rose Ballroom on Northeast Alberta in Portland, and the 3 of us have been doing it now for 5 or 6 years. I think 6 years regularly. Even though the Wednesday night dance was originally called Dance Your Edge, started by Lisa Tongle. That was an amazing dance. But we just basically, and it's sweet that there's 3 of us. We each bring our own flavor, and we play about an hour and 15 minutes of music with a half-hour of warm-up music before that. We present an intention that we come up with. We try to fit the music. It follows, like we were saying, loosely follows the 5 rhythms format. So it sort of, it starts out slow, like lyrical, or starts out flow, and then it moves into staccato, where you're sort of, getting into your body, finding your edges, finding the boundaries. Then it gets into chaos, where the point of chaos is to just playing kind of intense music, but it sort of just gets you completely out of your head and just gets you really into your body. And then you can just really let loose. And then it moves into lyrical, where now that you've maybe cleared what needed to be cleared, or you've gotten out of your head, you can just drop in and find the sweetness in your own authentic movement and your flow, and you're all warmed up, and then it goes into stillness. So we follow that format kind of loosely in our music, either with 1 or 2 waves of music that follow those rhythms. And it's just been so powerful for me to tap into that authentic expression. And then you're dancing with people. I mean, there's so many beautiful things about it. I could speak to it endlessly. Like, for one, there's people I dance with for years, and maybe we don't have a conversation, like a verbal conversation, but we have a conversation in our bodies, and that can be so profound.
It is finding. My experience of it. I've been to, I think, 3 now, at least, maybe more, but it's about finding. It's almost like finding a community, a tribe, a family that you're connecting with non-verbally.
Exactly.
And it's so awesome to experience that and to have that connection, because I tell you, for me, to be a healthy human being, this isn't just about brain trauma or recovery or anything, but just in general, it's so important to have that feeling of connectedness in whatever form. And dance is, I found for me, is such a good form for reconnecting your motor functions.
Yes.
And really, you could do your exercises and all that you have on your pamphlet. Do this every day, and I don't know what else, eye exercises, and there's a whole list of things you can do. But like the dancing, it really incorporates you and like your own self-expression, which is such an important piece, like remembering who you are
Yeah.
and reconnecting with that.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah, having been in your dance and experiencing that, and it's a safe space too.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know if you want to talk about the intention that you put forth.
Well, yeah, I try to be really mindful of the intention I put forth, and I'm playing the music and I'm tracking the sound to make sure it all sounds right, not too loud. The transitions are smooth. So if the music is just right and it's not jarring, and it takes people. I like to take people on a journey, and without them realizing it, before they know it, they've been taken on a journey, home to themselves, as I sort of like to think of it, but like, bringing you more into your body and out of your head. And